Well, today I have the pleasure of welcoming Sharon Santoni, who is the creator and, dare I say, CEO of My French Country Home, on the Extraordinary Women podcast and show today. I absolutely cannot wait. This was one of those podcasts that I just so look forward to. Well, let me give you a little bit of information on Sharon. Having raised her 4 children as a full-time mom for 20 years, Sharon Santoni saw the empty nest looming and decided to react. She set about to reinvent herself and find a new way to channel her energy and creativity. And in 2010, at the age of 51, she started a blog all about her life in France and quickly found an audience. A few years later, she published 2 successful books. We're going to talk about that. And in 2017, she created a luxury subscription box, which today delivers curated collections of French products to thousands of clients around the world. In 2019, Sharon published the first edition of her beautiful print and digital magazine, My French Country Home. She also offers an online boutique and runs high-end tours, which I had the pleasure of being on one. It was fantastic, more in the works, welcoming clients to the most beautiful regions of France. Today, Sharon is 64 years old, and her business is still growing with a team of over 10 people. She calls herself, and this is a fascinating phrase, an accidental entrepreneur, and says that she has learned from the past 10 years that staying creative is vital to her balance and well-being. Gosh, welcome. I just absolutely love talking with you today, Sharon. And so much of what I know you're going to share is going to be valuable to our listeners. So let's dive right in. Welcome, first of all. And
well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Share with everyone just kind of an overview of My French Country Home, all of the businesses, I'm calling that the brand, and all of the businesses that are now underneath that brand. I went through it a little bit in the bio, but share with us.
So yes, you're right. It is today. It is a brand. And I most definitely do consider myself an accidental entrepreneur because all of this has grown totally organically. It started off as a blog in 2010, as you have said. And I did something that no business school would ever teach its students for almost 5 years. I built up a community. I didn't know at that point that I was building up a community which would later become clients. But I was building up a community, and I built links and ties during those 5 years, which have been a precious foundation ever since.
Back up. When you say links and ties, what do you mean by that?
Well, links to real people.
Okay.
Links to real people. And so that when you are exchanging emails or imagining a new product or thinking about what's going to go into the magazine, it's not for some very vague image of what our audience or our client base may be, because so many people have been faithful to me and to us for so many years now that we really do have some very familiar faces on board. But I slightly jumped the gun there. So to come back to your original question about what is included underneath the My French Country Home brand, everything has grown organically. The first thing were the books. I was publishing the blog, and the American publisher Gibbs Smith approached me out of the blue and said, "We enjoy your blog, and we especially enjoy your section called My Stylish French Girlfriends," because I was writing every day for 3 years. Do you know what?
Oh my God.
It's such a greedy animal. I don't know how I did it. It would be impossible today, but I did write every single day on the blog for 3 years. So obviously I needed a lot of material. A blog that you're feeding that way is a very, very hungry animal. And so I would interview girlfriends of mine who had a beautiful house, who I felt were doing something interesting, a story that I could tell. And I called that series My Stylish French Girlfriends, and Gibbs Smith asked if they could publish a book on that theme, which we did. and that came out in 2015. And then another book about entertaining through the seasons with Gibbs Smith in 2017. And I remember saying, and then it really became clear to me that the time had come to move from this blog and morph into a business, knowing that I had zero knowledge of anything. I remember saying to somebody at that time, when the second book had come out, I said to somebody, I feel like I'm sitting on a thoroughbred horse, and I know that this horse is capable of winning a race somewhere, but I can't find the race course. I don't know where to take it. I don't know where the race is waiting for us. And then I was working with the tours just started going around that time, sort of 2016. And then I had a part-time assistant with me for the tours. And together, we started talking about subscription boxes. And Hannah, that's her name, said to me, do you know what? I think a subscription box could be a really good fit for your audience. And it was just like a light bulb went on. I thought, of course, because it's, I've always enjoyed highlighting other people's talents, which sounds like a really glib thing to say, but it's actually true. It's what you do on your podcast, right? There's a lot of enjoyment. It's like at Christmas time. It's actually more fun giving the presents sometimes than receiving them. And it sort of feels like that, right? It can be so much fun highlighting other people's talents. And by creating our subscription boxes, it was a way of highlighting so many of these wonderful French brands that were familiar to me. There are some bigger brands, but some of the really small artisan confidential brands where people are working with such huge passion all year round. And so the boxes, the first box was shipped in February 2017. Okay. Everybody was saying to me, so we got it all set up, and then we had to say, okay, we've got to start buying the products for that first box. How many boxes are we going to sell? And everybody looked at me for an answer, right, as if I knew. Right. And so I had to pretend that I knew. And so I said, we're going to sell 200 boxes. And everybody went, oof, really? 200? And my husband was going, really? I mean, that's a lot of stuff to buy. And we sold 198 on that first box.
That's incredible.
So that was, I guess, was a lucky guess. So the boxes got going in 2017. And then the tours by then were picking up speed as well. And then in 2019, I realized just how much the blogging world was evolving and changing so quickly. And again, without any previous knowledge or experience, I decided that it would be a good idea to launch a magazine. Honestly, if I'd known what I knew now, I might not have done it. It's kind of a beast. It's kind of a beast. And we were originally going to go with a digital magazine, and it's actually very quickly became clear that people wanted a printed magazine. So that was launched in 2019. And then 2020, the pandemic hit us. And by then I had a small team of 5 people by then. And my obsession, I think, like very many people who have their own company and who employ people, my obsession was to protect everybody's position and not to have to wave goodbye to anybody because of the pandemic. But I knew that our tours were going to be cancelled, and our tours are part of our business model. So I literally called everybody on a Zoom call or on a Skype call, I don't remember, and said, listen, guys, it's a little bit scary at the moment. Nobody knows where this pandemic's going to happen. I would ask, please, that for the next month, you work 30% less hours. And just give me a little bit just take that pressure off my shoulders, give me a little bit of slack, and we will figure this out. But we're not letting go of anybody. And overnight, we set up our online boutique, which is still going strong today. Yeah. Because at the warehouse where we had been packing the boxes, I always had a little bit of stock left over from the boxes. So I filled in one of those authorization forms that we've forgotten about because we had to have permission to get in a car and drive anywhere in the pandemic. Drove down to the warehouse, grabbed everything I could think of at the warehouse that could possibly be part of a new online boutique, and the packing materials and the tissue paper and the whole lot. Came back in my car and transformed our dining room here into a temporary, not very big warehouse. And thanks to DHL, who kept working all through the pandemic, and to the patience of my husband, because every morning we launched the boutique, and orders, during the pandemic, people wanted to shop.
Right.
So orders started coming in. And so every morning, the two of us would get up, we'd answer our own emails, we'd make another pot of coffee, put on some music, and we would fulfill orders from my dining room.
Yeah.
And thanks to that, 3 weeks after that initial phone call to my team, I called them back. I said, we're good. Go back up to your normal hours. We're good. And, people don't always imagine that the back end of a business story isn't necessarily very glamorous.
Yeah, it isn't. It's not well thought out. Sometimes it's very impulsive. And I love your phrase, organic, let's go do this. So
yeah.
Now,
absolutely, you have to do what you've got to do.
Yes, but that's an integral, that online store, if you want to call it that, is an integral part of your business, is it not?
Absolutely. So now we have the box and the boutique, the magazine, the tours, and just recently we've started developing more our travel section as well, which is sort of adjacent to the tours, where we're also offering people the more and more information about traveling in France with deeper and deeper regional guides and off the peg itineraries that they can just purchase. In much the same way that the tour that you were on, Sharri, we had an itinerary for each day, which obviously we put a lot of thought and care into. And so we're putting together these itineraries for people who want to do, I think we've got about 8 or 9 for the moment, but there's quite a few more coming soon. So somebody who wants to visit the Côte d'Azur for 5 days, there's an itinerary they can pick up and use for that. We're just about to publish our itinerary for Provence, for Luberon, which we published in a couple of weeks' time.
And also, don't you customize itineraries too? So if I call and say,
yes, we do that.
Yeah,
we do that. That's that happens now and again. But I think on the whole, people are just really pleased to use the regional guides that we include in our magazines, because we put a lot of information in there. People tell me they tear them out and put them into a scrapbook or something. But anyway.
Yes, it's fantastic.
But
go back, Sharon, to when you started the blog. So here you are, a mom of 4, your children, I'm assuming your oldest is probably going off to university, and you're recognizing, I'm not going to be able to be this hands-on mom, or else I'm going to university with my kids. Few mothers have done that. But you're trying to figure out what's next. Why blogging? You're a beautiful writer. Was that part of it? Or, why not? And why blogging versus, I don't know, playing tennis or learning to play bridge or whatever? What was it? Yeah.
The oldest had gone off to university. The youngest was 13, and having been a very, very, very hands-on mum and president of the Parents Association, and just super busy the whole time, I was beginning to feel a little bit redundant, and so I really was getting close to bored. And that's not good. I get grumpy when I get bored. That's not good. And so I didn't really know what I was going to do. But at midnight on New Year's Eve, 2009, at midnight, I raised my glass of champagne and I said out loud, 2010 is the year I reinvent myself.
Wow.
And nobody was really listening at the table. We had a big table of friends and there was lots of chatting. And I think just one person listened to me and he said, yeah, sure. Everyone says that. But I had said it out loud and I had said it to myself. And it was a kind of a promise to myself, I think. And just before Christmas, to go to your question of why blogging, just before Christmas, an American friend had sent me an email saying, I've started a blog. Here's the link. Go and see it. And I didn't know what a blog was. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't have my own computer. I had access to that computer in the house that nobody else wants, the steam-driven computer that took an hour and a half every morning to wake up. And anyway, I went on to her. I went on to her blog, and I was really impressed with the quality of her writing, and also I started going down her blog list on the side of her page, and I realized just how many blogs were out there, and I felt like she'd opened the doors onto a big party that was going on, and if I wanted to, I was allowed to push the door open and join in. So I thought, well, I don't know if anybody would read me, but I could give it a try. So I didn't actually know when I started. I didn't know if anybody was going to read me, and I didn't know if that was going to be the way to my reinvention, but it was a place to start.
Sure.
And so I figured it out and set up a blog on blogger.com. So it cost me nothing.
Okay.
And from those very first days as a blogger, I must say there was I was lucky to get to be blogging at that time. I think we were on the sort of crest of that wave of blogging, and some sincere long-term friendships have grown from that time around the world, actually, because we would say, we'd send each other emails and say, do you know how to fix this? Or how do I change this bit here to look like, to that color or whatever. We were all very amateur. But this is one of the things that I enjoyed the most about everything I've done since that promise to myself to reinvent, is that everything is a learning process.
Yes.
And I think that's such a pleasure and such a privilege to be absolutely compelled to learn something new the whole time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned that, 2010 was so many people started blogs in 2010. Yeah. It was really the emergence of the blogging world, and it's changed. It's evolved and changed. But why I bring that up is because I'm wondering if by going through the blogging process, even though it may not be as visible today or as easy to build a following today, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, was there something you learned through that process? What did the blogging of your feelings, your thoughts, your planning out, what am I going to blog about? You did it every single day, that discipline. How did that contribute to kind of where you are now?
It's everything. It's everything. I sincerely believe that I couldn't do what I'm doing now if I hadn't had those years of training. We can call it years of training. Yeah. First of all, on the IT side, but I say I didn't even know what a blog was. Right. Today, I can have quite a grown-up conversation with a code writer and not sound totally foolish. I mean, I can do that now. I've had to learn. I've had to get myself an accountant and a lawyer, and to be sufficiently confident and knowledgeable to be able to sit down and talk to them about what I'm looking for, where things are going, what the problems are, what would be the fixes. I've learned about photography. I've learned about the doors of so many French brands have opened up to me. I've learned more and more and more about these great French traditions and pride in their artisanship. And so those early blogging days, I suppose the very first lesson was, apart from the IT side, the very first lesson was this sharing community and the pleasure of bouncing ideas off one another and sharing information and learning whether or not your writing is working, or whether you're not, is this working, is that working? Because you understand pretty quickly what's working, what's not working. In those days when people were literally making coffee in the morning and going to visit their favorite blogs and leaving comments everywhere, if you had written a really good blog that tugged at everybody's heartstrings, I don't know, then you would find yourself with hundreds of comments. It doesn't happen anymore because everything's changed. And if you had written something a bit too fast and it wasn't so good, then people would just sort of leave a few polite words and move on. So the feedback was very clear and very directive. So and again, that's something that we totally use in the work today, because when we're writing the magazine and creating the boxes, we're always thinking about the feedback and the person on the other end of that box or of that magazine.
But I also hear, Sharon, that there's a value to it. So if I'm a woman sitting at home today and I'm 50 years old and I'm thinking to myself, my corporate career is coming to an end, or my children, or both, my children are growing up, I need to reinvent myself. I need to come up with my next chapter. What is that going to be? A blog is still not a bad place to start, not necessarily. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay.
I would. The advantage we had 13 years ago, it's very weird saying that word out loud, 13 years ago, was that people were, as I said, people were still visiting the blogs every day. Today, people don't really go around visiting their blogs. They wait for the newsletters to fall. In those days, we weren't doing the newsletters, so people were coming to us. Now it's for us, the publishers and the creators, to go to them. And of course, we rely heavily on social media as well for that. But yes, I think a blog, maybe a blog backed up with an Instagram account, I think it's a great way to start, because it's you have an immediate international platform.
Yes.
Providing you can get yourself out there.
Yes. And that's a really good comment, providing you get yourself out there, because I have conversations with women all the time who have all these ideas, but they don't go for it. Something stops them. How do I say? I had this conversation with somebody just yesterday. Is it a characteristic, a personal characteristic, or is it a muscle that getting going? Here's my idea. I'm going to try it out, and I might make a fool of myself. Who cares? Is that something that you build up over time, or is that something we naturally have? Some people.
I think maybe you naturally have it, but I think you can develop it. Okay. Because I think I'm always saying to my team, and they scream, and so I scare them. I say, we start before we're ready, because we never will be ready. You never will be ready. Yeah. Your checklist will never be checked off. That does not exist. Because for a start, what you think is your checklist right now is going to evolve. Because what you think is super important now, once you've got deeper into this project, you'll realize, oh, actually, no, hold on. That thing which I thought was top of the list it's not even relevant. So why did I spend all that time trying to check that one off? I would say start before you're ready. As you say, the worst thing, keep it legal. Hello. And keep it legal. Just saying. And I would say, especially for somebody who, I know that you are talking often to an audience of 50-ish-year-old, I would say don't put yourself in a situation where, to start a new project, that you need to borrow a whole load of money. Because I think with debt comes huge weight and responsibility. And if you are going to go to all the trouble of reinventing yourself and trying a new direction, let's make it fun. Do something you enjoy, and don't make it where you dread waking up in the morning because you've got those problems in front of you. Keep it doable. Take it one step at a time, but really enjoy the ride, enjoy the moment.
I love that. That's beautiful and so true. When I think of you, as a stay-at-home mom, even though you were a very, very, hands-on, as you call it, stay-at-home mom, ran organizations, parent to organization, whatnot. What were the skills that you learned as a stay-at-home mom that you think you actually tapped into pretty quickly when you created something for yourself?
Multitasking. I think that's
Mm.
what most women do, isn't it? We multitask. And
Yeah.
if you are as a mother of four with a garden and a house, and we're out in the country, so there's a lot of driving around for school runs and activities. We had a couple of horses and the dogs, and there was always a dog that had run away or that a horse, whatever. I think you multitask, and I think that's what you have to do in a business as well. You have to multitask.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have, as I say, I've got this small team, and perhaps curiously in our company, as a rule, nobody works on a Friday except for me. And I have to say that multitasking runs at a very, very high speed during the week because there's so much happening and there's lots of messages saying, what do you think about this? Can you look at that? Is this okay? And then Friday, when I've got the shop to myself, and I don't have to multitask quite so intensely, I'm a lot more productive. But yes, I think multitasking I do think it's a very female trait. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's very, very useful.
Yeah, yeah. And I ask that question because sometimes women will say, well, I've done this. This was my past, and you talk about multitasking queens to some extent, but how do I turn that into a business? I didn't go to business school, or I didn't, or I was a corporate position where I had an immense amount of support around me because you work in silos in a corporate setting typically. How do I turn that into being an entrepreneur? And even though you call yourself an accidental entrepreneur, what are those entrepreneurial traits to some extent besides multitasking that you have to embrace on a regular basis?
Your questions are very interesting and piercing. You're actually asking questions that I haven't asked myself. So,
for me, I'm sorry.
I think you do have to be quite brave as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And my father was definitely an entrepreneur, and he had two partners in his company, and they were in a completely different business to me. And one of the partners handled all the admin. One of the partners handled the, they were producing machines. So one of the partners was handling really the production, the nuts and bolts side of the production. And my father was the entrepreneurial free spirit of the three. He was the one coming up with the new ideas, waking up in the middle of the night saying, hold on, we could do that. And then persuading them that it was a really good idea when they were going, really? And I do think you have to be that person if you're going to be an entrepreneur. I think it's helpful. I think you have to have those slightly crazy ideas and see opportunities and be brave enough to go for them. And as I said previously, don't put yourself in a position where you're going to put yourself in financial danger. I don't think that's good for anybody, but give it a go.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you have just said, what's the worst you can do is make a fool of yourself. And at my age, you don't really care if you make a fool of yourself.
That's part of, I think, the wisdom that we gain as we age is we care less and less what everyone else thinks, or we should, and care a whole lot about what we think, and therefore, how will I feel if I don't do that, if I don't try that? And it might be a brilliant idea, and maybe not. It doesn't matter. But how will I feel if I don't find out? If I don't
exactly,
try?
Exactly.
Now
there are some hurdles you have to get over, but But yes, I think it's worth just sort of giving yourself a nudge and say, let's go for this. Let's at least explore the idea. I often say to my team, maybe this is a good idea.
Yes.
But maybe it's a good idea. But until we go down that route, we won't know. We won't know.
Yeah, and they do those articles sometimes about the good or the good bad ideas, and how brilliantly they worked out. And sometimes it's the seed. So the first bloom is not so great, but it takes you to something that's absolutely so much better.
Exactly.
So it's kind of interesting. You talk about a team, though, and even your example of your father, I think was really interesting, how everyone had kind of different roles within your father's company. How important as an entrepreneur is it to create a team so that you can, or should you learn it all yourself? So it's a team question as well as the support question. Because you also mentioned when you started blogging, you had kind of a blogging community, those that blogged, besides your readers, those that blogged, that you could bounce ideas off of or problems off of. So how important is all of that to create the team and the community?
Vital, absolutely vital. First of all, without the community, then I would have no raison d'être. There would be no reason for the blog to have ever existed. And in the same way, without our business today, without the community of our clients, we would have no reason to exist. But it would be physically and mentally impossible for me to run everything we do on my own. And I have a lot of affection and respect for the people who are in my team. I know that how can I put this? I know they rely on me to not screw things up too badly. But at the same time, even when I come up with something that sounds a little bit off the wall, they'll just sort of smile and say, yeah, well, we can try that. That sounds like it could work. And we brainstorm together about how this new idea is going to come into being, what needs to be put into place. The itineraries that we were mentioning earlier, it's an idea that has been bouncing off the walls here for probably 2 or 3 years since, because we know we've got these regional guides in the magazine and we know how much work is involved in putting those out. And we wanted to do something more with them. So we thought we could develop more of a travel side, but we couldn't quite work out how to do it. So we've been bouncing ideas off the wall, and then suddenly we thought, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then everybody decides which role they're going to play in order to make it happen, and it's rather a beautiful moment because it really is a team effort. It's a sort of basketball team passing the ball from one person to another until finally a team member, it doesn't really matter who, dunks the ball. And that is what teamwork is about. But it also heightens the enjoyment. It would be a little bit sad and lonely doing all this on my own.
Well, and I think it's impossible. Unlike your father, you don't have any energy to come up with creative ideas if, in fact, you're doing all of the technology, as an example, or you're doing learning and doing all of the magazine publishing or the shopping for the boxes or, putting the boxes together, whatever it might be. There's no energy left for creativity. And but it's interesting that you say, as the face of the brand, you are the brand. You have to give yourself that space to be creative. You have to understand that you're not a doer and that creativity is doing too, if that makes any sense.
You are so right. You've put your finger on something really important. And that's one of the reasons those Fridays when hardly anybody else is working are so precious to me, because I will check on my emails. I might catch up with something on the computer that I hadn't had time to during the week. But that is when I will get out there and meet somebody I've been wanting to meet for a long time, or do a lot of flower arranging, or try and do something that's going to feed my creativity. Because at the end of the day, I am the editorial line on everything that we do, the box, the tours, and the magazine. And I'm also a product. This product here is called Sharon Santoni. And that product also has to be sort of maintained, and sounds very weird what I'm saying. I don't at all take myself seriously. I've just had to come to recognize that this is a fact. And that we need this product to maintain the brand and to help the brand grow. So yes, but creativity, never ever underestimate the power of spending a couple of hours doing something creative.
Yeah, I think that's something that you actually are touching upon when you talk about that. This is something you have to take care of also, because you're on camera, you're speaking, you're sharing, you're communicating both with vendors or potential box people, as well as your clients, all over the place. And therefore you have to take care of this too, both in how you put yourself together, your style, your well-being, your health, how you speak, all of that. It can seem frivolous. We can think it's frivolous, but yet I love that description. You are the brand, and you have to take care of the spokesperson for the brand. Yeah. The brains and the spokesperson. So interesting.
Yeah. The brand image is vital.
It is. So talk a little bit about reinvention, because reinvention, so many people, men and women to a great extent, will talk about like, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to get up tomorrow and have different habits, and I'm going to become, a better version of who I am, or a different version of who I am today. How would you describe your reinvention? You go from mom to blogger to publisher. How did that all work internally? How did you start to see yourself different as not the hands-on mom, not running the PTA as we call it in the United States, but now as almost a businesswoman, a blogger first, and then a businesswoman? What went on up here?
I think my kids used to say your blog is actually your fifth child, and it was. It was my new baby that I had to take care of and get dressed and make sure it was being fed properly and watch it grow. And sometimes people do say to me, I want to reinvent myself too, but I don't know what to do. What would you tell me? And you can't tell anybody else what to do as their reinvention. But I do think you can tell them to find something they can be passionate about, or they can become passionate about. Because the blog, when I started it drew me in very, very quickly. And I think the first thing that drew me in was because I was actually enjoying the learning curve.
Okay.
And then I enjoyed inserting myself into this community and beginning to make friends. And then I started to enjoy the feedback coming back from this new audience. And after that, it sort of snowballed, because if you've suddenly got an audience, you're not just doing it for your dog who's sitting beside you at the desk, and for your family who are being polite about the last thing you posted on your blog. But you've actually got a real audience all around the world, then it all snowballs. You want to do even better. And so you try and you aim higher. And this, I think, let's think of somebody who's come out of the corporate world and who's going to reinvent themselves via painting. And maybe they don't know how to paint. So that first thing will also be a learning process of maybe they'll take some classes, maybe they'll just buy a box of paints and a few canvases or a block of paper and sit there and make all those mistakes and learn about how they're most comfortable holding the brush and what gives the best results. And they actually prefer to paint pictures of flowers, but landscapes are a bit more tricky. And then they'll start showing those paintings to other people, and somebody say, wow, that's really nice. Could you do that picture of, could you do one of my house? Or could you paint a set of flowers for my kitchen? And then they'll suddenly find themselves with a client. And not everybody who reinvents themselves is looking for a business venture.
Right.
There's so many ways of reinventing yourself.
Very true.
So many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also talk a little bit, if you can, about how the reinvention of Sharon impacted your children, your husband, because now all of a sudden the children are not the focus. I have kids. I had a husband for a long time, and children just kind of take up all your time, and they're really the center of your relationship in many ways with your significant other. So how did that all change? And, was it hard? Was it easy for them to see their mom, you call it a mom, their mom, not just as, Mom, I need this. Can you drop this off? I've forgotten this. I need help with this. And even your husband, do we talk about the kids, or now you're going to talk about your business? How did that happen?
Well, it's funny you asked that question, actually, because years and years and years ago, when I was blogging regularly, I was part of a little blogging group. Once a month, we were all given the same theme to blog about, which was always quite fun. And once they asked us to pull in a guest blogger for our own blogs, which I scratched my head about. And in the end, I asked one of my daughters to write a piece about what it was like for the family to see this person who is their mother morph into this person who sat in front of a computer for hours on end and who was suddenly talking to people around the world. And she very eloquently, she said that it was actually a little bit strange, but they quite enjoyed the process, and they had to, and sort of at the end they were pleasantly surprised, and then maybe even quite admirative of the way it had worked out. And for my husband has, I have a very non-egocentric husband who succeeds in his own way, and who we don't compete. He's got his own area and I've got my own area, and he's been nothing but support. He's not involved in any way in the business, but he's a great sounding board. When I've got something that I've got an idea that it's not quite ready to talk about with the team because there's sort of financial decisions to be made, and he's a great sounding board just to sort of throw ideas like a practice wall on a tennis court, just throwing ideas at him and seeing how they bounce back. That's very, very, so no, nothing but support. And I would say to somebody who wants to reinvent themselves, if it's going to be something that's going to take up a lot of time, keep your family in mind. And how it's going to impact them. Yes.
And have those conversations rather than just doing it and expecting everyone to know what's going on inside your head.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. Anyway, my social media figures are better than my kids, so that's always good for my self-esteem.
Yeah. It's funny. How do you find balance, Sharon? Because one of the fears that women who are creating something, and especially a business as their next chapter venture, have this fear that it's going to take over their lives. So how?
Well, I would say that's pretty realistic. I wouldn't try and
compartmentalize
their eyes. No, honestly, I think if you're going to found a business and you're aiming to have something that's successful, then yes, let's just get real with this. It's going to eat up You're going to think about it while you're asleep. You're going to think about it when you wake up. You're going to, yes, of course, you're still there for the family, but it is all consuming. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say to anybody, no, don't worry. You can just turn the switch off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Not if it's, yes, if you're just if your reinvention is something where you're, as I said earlier, taking up painting for your own pleasure, then maybe you're also getting up in the middle of the night because you've thought about something you want to do with that painting. I don't know.
Yep.
I would say I think it should sort of come with a warning tab saying, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for.
You don't know where it's going to take. Yeah, you don't know where it's going to take you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you love it, you are going to be thinking about it all the time. You really do.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the time.
Fun. Yeah. So you and I, in closing, are really close, about the same age. How do you see your company and your business morphing as you age? And is part of your reinvention, in a way, a thought process reinvention as to what you're supposed to be doing in your 50s, in your 60s, in your 70s? What is that all about? Because it's very different from our mothers.
Yes, this has evolved so much, hasn't it, in one generation. My mother also had 4 children, and she was also a full-time mum. But when we all left the house, I don't think it crossed her mind for a single minute to start a business, and that was great. And she was very happy and kept a beautiful home and entertained, etc. It's not for everybody, but if your question is, how do I see this evolving, then I don't feel, as of yet, any urgency to stop. And if tomorrow morning I put the key under the door and said, okay, well, that was fun, we're stopping now, I'm not really sure what I would do with my time. I would have to find something else to do. I'd probably start another business. I don't know. Maybe I'd paint. I don't know. Maybe my garden would have fewer weeds in it, I guess. Yes. But I just staying involved in society around you, and being in a position where you can meet so many people on so many different levels, where you remain relevant, where you remain interested and interesting.
Yeah.
I just think it's just such a privilege. I really do. And I'm not ready to let go of that privilege anytime soon.
I love this. It's to remain relevant, to be interesting and interested. Yeah. It's kind of the lifeblood of us as humans, really, in many ways. And we have the opportunity to do it. As long as we keep it all together, health-wise, we have the opportunity to do it for we don't know how long, because we're trailblazers, really, in many ways.
Yeah, you think so? You think we're trailblazers?
I think we are, from the standpoint of the description of both of our mothers. Our mothers, the children were raised and they did not ever think about starting a business. But we have the opportunity to, because of our health situations today, to think, I might live to be 85. I might live to be 95. What am I going to do for the next 30 years? Oh, I could do something significant for me, whatever that might be. So in that sense, that's how I would define a trailblazer. This is the first generation of women who really have the opportunity to say, what am I going to do now in this stage of my life? Yeah.
But I would say to somebody who is thinking about this and who is maybe scared of the age aspect, because this is something I've had to learn myself. Now and again, I've been to meetings where I've had people on the phone a lot, but we haven't actually met yet. And I often have this apprehension of that first meeting, reaching out to shake their hand, and just seeing that thing go across their eyes saying, oh, so she's that old. And you have to, and maybe it's in my mind and maybe it's not in my mind. It doesn't really matter whether it's real or not, because it's enough just to throw me off balance for a quarter of a second. I would say to people, be aware of that it could be a danger. Ageism can be a real thing, but I think sometimes it's more in our own heads than in other people's. And we have to get over that, because it's a totally useless hurdle. It doesn't serve any good purpose. And anybody who is listening, who is of our generation or 50 or 45 or of whatever age, we all have a role to play, and we all have something to bring to the table. And it happens that most of my team are a way lot younger than more my children's generation. And so there are things they can certainly climb a flight of stairs or 6 flights of stairs more quickly than I do, but I have more endurance than them. And of course I have more experience than them. So I can look at a problem in such a different way and keep more calm about things, and draw and understand myself better, so I can understand better when I want to draw on my creativity and when we actually need to go back to a reference book and look something up. Maybe I haven't said that very clearly. I just want to say that everybody, no matter what your age, you've got something to bring to the table, and never let age be a factor in deciding what you're going to do next.
Yeah, like whether you're young or old, and recognize that. Yeah, I love though that you said sometimes ageism is in our own heads. We have that block. Oh my gosh, I love that you said I'm 64 years old, because there's a hesitancy, and I feel it even in myself, to say my age publicly. I rather say a woman of a certain age. Well, that's what's going on in here. I'm creating that scenario. No one on the other side is. And that's really important for us to think about. And if you're young, it doesn't mean you have to have a certain path. It's what is it that really brings you joy that you can also make a living at, And you're
allowed to make mistakes and change your mind as well.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody who has gone through their whole life without taking a wrong turn at some point and saying, no, hold on, that wasn't right, and then backtracking and start again? That doesn't exist. It does not exist.
No, there is.
How boring that would be.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I agree. They would be boring people, because truly people only become interesting when they make mistakes, when they try things, that took some courage. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and your conversation today. And we talked about some hard things. So, the maybe not so often discussed. So I appreciate the conversation. I know everyone who listens is going to feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharri, and thank you for the work that you do with your podcasts. I've listened to quite a few of them, and I think you cover some really interesting subjects, and you fulfill a great role. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It was a pleasure.